If you are looking for FC25 coins as well as other game keys, currencies, gift cards, and more, check out u7buy.com. Doing so via the link in the description would really help me out. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. This one's going to be a little defending tutorial. I'm going to try to keep this a little bit shorter and sweeter, because I don't consider defending to be that complicated. It's maybe the thing I've received the most questions on. I guess people really appreciate my defensive style. It's a little bit aggressive, but to me defending's pretty simple. I've got three basic concepts for you. That's going to be recognition, positioning, and timing. All of which I think are pretty simple, and it'll depend on your formation and then game state, which is all of what recognition is about. We're going to get into the tactics board and show you what I mean. So the first thing I really want to talk about is positioning, and most of that's going to be, do you want to maintain your shape or don't you? If you're playing a flat formation, to me this is normally a formation with three lines, so it would be something like the 4-4-2. The 4-2-2 is a little bit less flat. You might think it's pretty similar, but you've got some depth between your players, so this is more of a four-line formation. Still not that creative on defense. Normally something like this, you'd want to keep your shape in. Same idea with my 4-2-3-1 that I've been using recently. This is the 4-2-3-1 wide with LM, RM to the sides, but you don't have too much creativity going on here. Most of the time you want to keep your players basically in the same shape, but there's some opportunities where you get a little bit more creativity. You get to involve more players in your defensive shape. But most of the time if you're doing something flat, like we'll say 4-4-2, 4-5-1, most of the 5-backs I would consider as flat formations, you don't have a lot of opportunity to create situations where you break that shape apart and you're trying to like make your opponent panic or just limit the amount of space on the field. Most of the time in these formations, you just want to maintain your shape. So this is really simple. A lot of you will understand this already. But here, don't do anything that breaks your lines. So if you move one of your center mids out, you'll see as we move from that flat shape into a much more compromised one where they're going to have a big gap here that they can exploit. So most of the time you don't want to drag any of your players out of position. There is an order, like a hierarchy of which players you can drag out and which ones you can't. Center backs are going to be the most valuable ones you want to make sure are kept in those positions, but you can always be pretty aggressive with your strikers because if these guys are out of position, all that really opens up space for with your opponent is going back, which who cares? They've got the ball here, it's not that dangerous. And it's kind of your left mid and right mid. If you drag these players out, it's not that big of a deal. You've got coverage behind you. And then the value of having the ball on the wing isn't that high value, you know, unless you're really looking for a Trivela from there. And then it's your center mids and maybe your center mids and your fullbacks at the same time, both of whom give up pretty valuable space, not the most valuable, not the center back value, but, you know, pretty dangerous to be over here, pretty dangerous to have this big pocket in the center too. So kind of get the idea there. The benefit of a non-flat formation is going to be anytime you get kind of the numerical advantage here and you can start collapsing players, I don't have to maintain my shape that much because you can't play through them. So we'll talk about that with my 4-3-3 holding, why I kind of like it defensively when I was able to make it work on offense, but defensively I still really like it. I just can't attack with it. But the problem here is it's just too long to drag anybody out of position because of kind of how spaced out everybody is here. It's too difficult to pull them out of shape and create a non-flat shape to create more numbers to defend with. By that time, it's normally, again, the distances are just a little bit too great, and you're giving up space somewhere else that's pretty valuable without any real defense here, unless you're able to kind of involve multiple players and block off that way, which means you'd have to have this player as the defensive one here. Again, it's much more difficult in this formation, so most of the time you're just maintaining that shape. An important thing to note is if you're playing an offside trap formation, then anytime your line steps up like this, we'll move all of them forward to demonstrate. Eventually they're going to drop back. So if you don't win the ball back on that immediate push up, then this back line is going to drop, and they're going to drop a little bit faster than your midfield line. So you want to be careful because they're going to step back like this, and it's just going to be 2 or 3 extra seconds before these players go, oh, the line dropped, we're going to follow with. So immediately after that offside trap is kind of when you're most vulnerable here. Obviously, it's a great chance to win the ball back, but in that case, if you recognize your team has stepped up and starts to drop off, you might want to manually select one of your center mids and just push them back like this. Might generate a little more of a pocket here as you kind of disconnect from the rest of your team, but again, you're defending the valuable space. This is where you want to make sure your opponent can't do anything. You will always be happy to give up space. Here, maybe out wide. These are all perfectly fine spaces to you know, seed you're positioning for to defend something more valuable. But here, kind of maybe this region, is where it's most dangerous. Anything in the center and anything in those half spaces there. Now I've gone ahead and set up my 4-3-3 holding on the other side, and we'll see immediately. It might look like there's less players in the midfield. It's 4 versus 3. But really it's 2 versus 3 the way I consider it, because you've only got 2 players you really want to defend with in most situations. Whereas here you'll have 3 very central and very close together. So this shape is a lot easier to break, to mold around if you get your opponent attacking down one wing. Like all of their numbers are kind of on one side. This player might drop a little, this player might move up into this space. And what you might notice is, okay, they've got somebody here. You might think this is kind of the dangerous area to get into. And you'd be right, but the difficulty is actually any ability to get the ball into that space. By the time you make that pass here, this player will just move back here, and then the pocket of space is gone. And if you're able to step up with this correctly, you might be able to completely block it off, where you can form a shape like that. This pass is too risky, this player might intercept it, and they won't have any ability to go through here either. That's guarded by 2 different players. So you might see you're turning situations in a formation like this into ones where you've got the numbers advantage. All of a sudden you've got, it might look like you start with only 3 or 4 players able to defend in any situation. This one I'd say maybe 3, right? All of a sudden you're turning that into maybe 5 players at once. Now we've got this whole pocket here. So it's much easier to gain the numbers advantage. Yeah, you're leaving space somewhere else, but normally it's not space that they're able to access if you're doing this correctly. This requires a lot of manual movement off of the ball, but a formation like this, because it starts closer and because it's not one flat line, we have depth between them, so we're able to step up easier. When you've got that flat line on the other side, again, the point is it's much harder for them to come and make any kind of connection. Whereas if they're dropped a little bit, now we can make an actually more valuable shape there. So here all the time, we're kind of able to generate these, once again, numbers advantage on defense. This is all just to say, what formation you're playing is going to dictate your defensive style. If you've got that flat formation, you're really just going to want to maintain that shape. It's hard to generate opportunities to really win the ball back, to completely limit your opponent's ability to even recycle the ball back and dribble out of you, and, normally they'll like, oh, you're in a good shape here, but I can always go back. I can at least hold on to the ball, and I'm just going to do this for a while until eventually your AI moves out of position or something. In a formation like this, it is much easier to create that advantage yourself and get your opponent stuck in a situation where they actually can't dribble out, they can't pass out, they're stuck, and you basically win the ball for free in a situation like that, right? But it's a much more aggressive style, and if you mess it up, maybe we step up like this instead, and you've got that little bit of a gap, that's where the opponent's able to exploit. So first thing for you, looking at defense, is just what formation you play and what that's going to encourage you to do as a defensive player. That 4-2-3-1 that I've been playing recently, I would say is a flat formation that in some situations you'd be able to turn, say, non-flat and get a numbers advantage. But that's really reliant on if you're able to stall long enough with your center mids or CDMs and force your opponent to go into somewhere that is either just buying enough time, I don't have to control these players, they're just kind of moving back, and that's where it's, okay, all my players are set, I'm going to involve somebody who's not normally on defense and get them involved, and now we've got the numbers advantage. In a situation like that, I involve this player, I might even involve this one. You can think the same thing. Maybe they've got an overlapping wingback, but they just can't access that at all, and all of a sudden I've got them surrounded. But that's really dependent on defending for a long enough time that everybody's in a really set position, and you're able to encourage your opponent into a space that you're basically able to control somewhere else. So that is, versus that 4-3-3 holding, I'm much more defensively slow, I would say, than I am in the other one, or more defensively slow in this shape than I would be in that one. Can be much more aggressive. You think even if I run one of these players out of position, this looks like a dangerous spot, but I'm able to just go ahead and cover that, and now I've got still 2 defensive midfielders. With just the 2 to start with, you don't want to be quite as aggressive with them. Now we've got a big gap and only 5 defenders on the whole defensive shape here. So you want to be more defensively solid, and you're just trying to, instead of making any great movement like that, you might step them out just a little bit like that. And if your opponent's here, what you're looking to do is you kind of corral them. You'll just follow. I'll block off all of their spaces here. And eventually, maybe I'm able to gain just that upper hand. Maybe I'm a little bit faster, maybe a little stronger. Just force them back this way. that's when I switch to a player like this and come and try to close them down. And now I've got a 2v1 advantage against them. So hopefully that explains some of what I'm looking to do on defense, but that's kind of the positional part. The next thing to do about all of this would be recognition. So that's game state management. It's really how many options your opponent has and how many of them are going to be a dangerous threat, how many of them your opponent's actually going to utilize. Let's talk about it. So there's a pretty obvious order of operations for defending, but if you haven't thought of it this way, we'll go through it really quickly. So that's the most important thing is to stop any goal scoring opportunity. So if your opponent's in a situation like this and you're thinking, oh, they might finesse it, they might trivela it, that's really dangerous. First thing I have to do is step up to block that shot. No matter what, that's going to be, okay, it's a scoring opportunity, I have to defend that. Even if this opens up something else, maybe they'll have like a pass down the wing. You know, I have to guard the more dangerous thing, I'll give you that one and just say, I'll go ahead and defend that. You know, if it's immediately more dangerous, if it's like this, then you've got the debate of, am I going to guard the pass or am I going to guard the shot? Maybe I'll just rush them down and hope they'll take a heavy touch as they're under pressure, or they'll mess it up, they won't have the reaction time for it or something. You might say, actually, I think this is more dangerous, you can go ahead and have that shot. Maybe I'll just move my goalie, maybe you don't have a left-footed striker here to, you know, you don't have a player to make the right long shot here. But no matter what, in any situation, you know, they've got something through on goal, that's where you have to defend first. Even if it'll give them something else, you say, okay, I can just defend the next thing later. That's going to be less dangerous than the immediate shot or, you know, goal creating opportunity. You've got that, but if your opponent doesn't have an immediate threat, normally you've got time to pick your eyes up and scan the field. So if the opponent's got the ball here, again, you're kind of looking for that immediate threat. Do they have any immediate option to, you know, maybe this is a long ball plus player and they're going, oh, you know, I might be able to do something like that. And that's where I'm selecting this player and just, I'm not pulling them out of shape. I don't want to, you know, create like that big of a gap or anything. Obviously this creates a way deeper offsides line. But, you know, I'll switch to this guy. Maybe I'll move him a little bit closer to this player here. Maybe I'll step back just a little bit. Maybe he's doing this defensively just to try to block off that. And once again, I'm saying, hey, you can take this, but I'm considering the over-the-top to be way more of a dangerous option. I'll give you something in the midfield. I can defend that in a couple seconds here. You know, we'll do the same defensive action for the next midfielder. But I'll give you that. There's no immediate goal-scoring threat from that, so I'm going to block the next most dangerous option. And so you kind of go down that category, like categorically. It's, can they score? No. Can they create a dangerous opportunity? No. Can they do something that creates something that's a dangerous you know, not an immediate like through ball or anything, but maybe a 1-2 pass and then there's your next through ball. And you're just trying to limit their options. And eventually, defensively, what the most effective thing I find for myself is can you know, if they don't have anything too dangerous, can you encourage them into an opportunity that they might think is dangerous, but you're actually in control of? A lot of people will make this pass too soon because it looks like this player is open here. But all that happens, you make that pass here, I'll step back here. Now you've got significantly less options. We think like this. I've got 1 passing lane. I've got 2 passing lanes. I've maybe got 3. If I step up like that, now you've really only got 1 passing lane, assuming this player's blocking this enough, you know. And then it's saying, hey, you know, This could be a dangerous opportunity if you've got the long shot, but I've got this player right here, and actually I've got the numbers advantage. So all I've done is encourage you into a situation where I'm now the one in control, rather than you being here and you being the one in control. So the most dangerous opponents to face are the ones who are going to go, actually, I'm in control here. I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to linger, you know. They're going to say, hey, pull yourself out of shape for me, and now maybe I'll have an opportunity to do something, rather than allowing you to keep in your shape. If you play this pass too if you're the attacking team on blue here, you play this pass too soon, all you're doing is saying, hey, my opponent's in their defensive shape, I'm going to let them stay in shape, and I'm going to just attack them as they want to defend. And that's really not the smart way to do it. You want to say, hey, pull yourselves out of position somehow, compromise your shape for me, so that now I'll create an opportunity somewhere. So if you're able to just encourage your opponent to maybe make a pass too early, and then limit their options, maybe they'll do the same thing. They'll drive through here with a dribble, but if this player's too marked, all of a sudden, once again, they're a little bit closed off, and then they'll be forced to make that same pass again. I'll be able to close that down. So you're looking to basically determine how many options your opponent has on offense and say, hey, you've got a dribble and a pass, you've got a dribble and 3 different passes here. You don't have a shot, so you've got kind of 4 opportunities here. Oops, now you've got maybe 3 opportunities. Kind of a shot. It's not that great of a shot, though. You've got 1 pass onto you, and you've kind of got a dribble, but you're a little bit close to. A little bit too close to the defenders to really have that chance. And that's where I'm saying, okay, well, you know, go ahead and take your dribble then. I've got you surrounded. You've lost all of your passing opportunities here. I'm confident in dribbling you. I can even commit somebody else there. What, you're going to make this pass? No, the center back's going to get there in time. So you're really trying to just gain, I normally consider it a numerical advantage. Sometimes it can be a quality advantage. So you might say, I've got an Anticipate Plus player. This is Carvalho for me. So you know what, go ahead and have that. I can just run at you with him. You know, he's got Anticipate Plus. I'll just make this tackle pretty much all of the time. It's almost guaranteed. It's this game, so it's a little bit suspect sometimes, but it's almost guaranteed, right? So sometimes you can consider it that way of just, I've got this really solid player here who's going to make the right decision for it, or have the right ability for it. Most of the time, it's a numerical thing for me. If they've only got so many players on offense, if you're able to get them in a situation where you've just got more defenders, you can involve maybe some attackers who aren't normally on the defensive side by just delaying enough, buying enough time to get them back. Sometimes that is also breaking your shape. So you might do something like this, where, you know, in this situation, I've now broken my standard defensive line, and they're like this. You might think that's a little bit compromised, but now I might step like this. And now all you have is the pass out wide, or you might make that run. You're probably, like, again, that's your only option. That's going to be the choice you go with. And by that time, I should be able to do this as you advance down the field. Same kind of idea. I've got this 2 controlled. All I'm really doing is corralling you into the corner. This is a little bit of a dangerous opportunity here. Obviously, people will do this pass all the time, right? But if you're able to corral them correctly, and you've just got this closed off the whole time, or you're kind of switching between these 2 players, or sometimes using second man press on one of them, you know, yeah, eventually they'll get in a spot where they won't be able to make that pass. It's just too crowded. They won't be able to make that one. It's just too crowded. They also can't really turn around either, because I should have the advantage on that. You've got to turn your whole player around, whereas my body shape is facing kind of like this way, right? And their body shape is facing more this way. So it's a much longer turnaround for them than it will be for me. So I basically have you cut off from everything. You won't even be able to make that pass back to the fullback because my fullback's in the way. So you're looking for those opportunities to just shut down your opponent's options, where maybe they start with 3, 4, 5 different things they can do, and they're getting into situations where they've only got 1 or 2. And if you're able to defend those 1 or 2 really well, then they're stuck. They can't really do anything, or they're stuck doing something kind of jammy and hoping that it works, but hopefully most of the time you'll get the ball back. There's an element of risk to it. Obviously, it's this game. I don't want to lie to you and say, hey, this is going to work every single time. Sometimes you'll have this blocked off, and they'll make this pass. And it just works anyway. You know, if you've got an Intercept Plus player here, maybe you'll be a little bit safer feeling like you do this. There also is that dangerous near post shot where this one goes in, which is really frustrating. Goalies should always be able to save that in the near post, and they don't. But point being, what I'm looking to do on defense pretty much all of the time is just encourage my opponent into those little gaps where I'm going to, you know, like, it looks like they've got the advantage, but I've got the actual advantage because they've had that option open, and as soon as they make that decision, I close it down behind them. You can do it in that flat 4-4-2 too. It's just a little bit, not 4-4-2-2, that'd be a lot of players. That 4-4-2 as well is a little bit harder. You've got to have the right timing for it, where you've got enough time to get everybody else involved, because it just takes longer. And you don't really have those situations where you get to encourage them into a spot where you already control. And my 4-3-3 holding means if they ever get the ball in here, I'm pretty much always going to have a numbers advantage. Like, there's always, basically here, I've got a really solid triangle of 3. If they have less than 3 players and I'm controlling this region, this is a really solid triangle of 3, same idea. I'm normally controlling that. Some of these spots you might even consider being a diamond of 4, and sometimes you can even encourage that into a greater number. But there are less dangerous areas in the field. You think, like, here is kind of where I don't control, sometimes here. Sometimes I'll pull the fullback over to increase the numbers and just give them, okay, you'll have the thing down the wing, but I consider this much less dangerous than having the ball in here, right? So I'd rather control this area. But the opponent gets encouraged into zones where I've got greater numbers a lot more in a formation like this than in a formation like the 4-4-2. So here you have to play that waiting game longer. It's more solid where there's nothing immediately threatening, whereas like this formation can get compromised sometimes where if you just recognize the wrong thing or the opponent just makes a really good run, sometimes there are just spaces open, whereas in the 4-4-2, there's really no spaces open, like, by default whatsoever, no matter how good the runs are being made are. As long as you're keeping your shape compact and correct enough. Again, you don't want to drag anybody out like this. This is what I look for on offense all the time. I'm trying to force you out of position. This is the gap. You know, it's the same idea. I've got a player in here. I beat your one player. Now you've got to do something else. Now you're pulling yourself out again. No matter what you do, you're doing something that creates space for me somewhere, right? Because you can't afford me this much of a gap. I'll just dribble through or take a shot or something. So again, if you're in one of these flat formations, you want to just kind of bide your time a little bit longer. You don't have a great opportunity to really get those numbers involved. Sometimes that will just happen naturally out of one of your offside traps. All of a sudden you've got a much closer relationship. More numbers involved in a certain spot. Sometimes your opponent will just kind of walk into you anyway, where all of a sudden now you've got the opportunity to make that connection. And a lot of that depends on where the opponent's other players are too. So if this one's here, it's more dangerous to make this connection. You can sometimes if it completely blocks off the passing lane, but you've always got to be a little bit worried of that threat. You might take that one dribble around you and then be able to make that pass. So again, especially if they're, I'd call this pinning, where the opposition player is pinning this player wide. Same thing would happen here. If this player's here, this one might come up like that. And now I've got these defenders who can't move inside because they're being occupied by somebody else. So it depends on your opponent's shape as well. But you've just got to linger a little bit longer. You can form those greater numerical connections sometimes, but it's not normally a result of you pulling a bunch of your players out kind of by default. It's normally your opponent walking into the areas that you just kind of happen to control at that moment, or they walk into an area that just kind of gets them too far away from the rest of their team. They'd have the numbers advantage if they had all of these players getting involved here, but as soon as they make the step up a little bit too soon, or these players haven't had the opportunity to get all the way down the field, this guy goes, oh, it looks like there's a bit of a gap here. I'm going to walk into that, right? Same problem of it gets closed behind them. This player's too far away to be connected at all. If they do this a little bit later, say when the fullback has moved up here rather than started back here, again, normally on a counterattack, you might be just moving too fast and too far away from all of your players. But if this one's moved up a little bit, maybe I'll make that run into here. Maybe I've got the out ball because this player is going to make the overlap. That might even occupy this one, which creates a little bit more space. It's all, when we're talking about game recognition, it's all kind of, what are the areas they're actually able to attack? Do they have enough numbers forward that forces your players to stay wide, stay occupied by them, stay pinned? Or are they just kind of encouraged to move into these attacking positions that moves their maybe kind of like offensive line here, midfield line there, right? And then it moves the offensive line further away. There's too much of a gap here. They're going to basically move your lines in between your lines. And you're just going to say, oh, I've got defensive control here now because you moved too quickly through the phases. Sometimes you can encourage those phases to happen a little bit faster. I will often step up with my fullback and say, yeah, actually, like you've got this run. You know what? You can make that pass. I'll step up with him here rather than guarding this because you make that pass and I'm normally able to close it down. Maybe you've got one attacker, maybe two that have connected with you by that time, where normally this one's just a little bit further behind. I'll say, you know what? I'm still going to have a defensive advantage. It's going to take me a while to catch back up to you, but I will. It's just, by the time I do, it's deeper on the field rather than here. I'm just back here. But I'll encourage you into that same shape again. I've caught up to you by here. You might think this is a more dangerous spot than here. You'd normally be right, and in real life this would be dangerous, but in FIFA it's like, okay, well I've got you closed down. What are you going to do? This player hasn't like the AI never makes this sprint fast enough all the way here. They'll just kind of jog up to connect. So you'll never basically have this pass back. You'll be able to control that too easily. If this player, maybe they press L1 on him and you notice him making that sprint just all the way down the field, then you've got a little bit more danger. But that pretty much never happens. Nobody like is dribbling this way, right? And then flicks their stick back here to press L1 on this guy to force a run, right? So sometimes I'll encourage, you know what? You can move down the field if you want to. It's going to disconnect you from the rest of your team and do the same thing of, we start with those lines, now we've got these lines. It's too much space between them for you to be able to hold onto the ball and recycle it. And that just means I'm going to control all of these zones because you've got nothing going backwards. Now, this is a bit complicated, and we've got a lot to cover here, but bear with me. So as the opponent gets the ball back, very direct immediately. See, De Jong's trying to get forward really quickly. One little turn back to the side. Tries to get it forward. and gets cut off, has to go back. So something I'll talk about a lot is as you make this pass from your midfield line to your attacking line, what you've done is get the ball away from your players who can play the ball forward to any kind of dangerous run being made. You know, they've got the right angle to make those passes, and players ahead of them, right? You get the ball to the player who was ahead and now has nobody ahead of them. So you kind of get yourself away from all of your creative players and get, basically accept getting the ball to somebody who can't pass anymore. All they can do is dribble or try to take a shot. And in this situation, there's not much going on. So they do okay with it, but it's not the most dangerous thing they could have done. You know, the left-footed pass there to whoever's 17 there. Not really on from Tevez. They do an okay job of holding on to the ball, but it would have been much more dangerous from them if they actually held the ball a little bit further back. So defensively for me, there's not much going on here. They've gotten from this line to this line, but all they did was get the ball through the midfield line, and I'm pretty much in control of this. If I had one of my CDMs a little bit closer, then I could have had this little box around Tevez and basically shut them out from doing anything. Stepped up a little bit with one of the CDMs, Stanway there. Let's see. Trying to cut off one of the other passing lanes. It opened up something forward, which I didn't mind because it wasn't dangerous. So I say, hey, you can take that pass forward because you've got nobody else connected. Now, this pass becomes more dangerous if Rafinha's maybe here and can make that run instead of just being marked by Kimmich the whole time. Maybe Bonmatti's up here where they do this little triangle and now there's some kind of something dangerous happening. You know, maybe if it's Putellas out here. Putellas was there and then you could maybe threaten a through ball like that. But because they've got no threat, they can move the ball forward. They've got nothing really to create here. So I say, okay, that's fine. You can move it forward. I'm defensively solid throughout all of this. Now again, very direct from Bonmatti. Getting forward, kind of disconnecting yourself from everybody. And I've got a vast numbers advantage here. So we think they've got 3 players, maybe eventually 4. Just 3 at the moment versus my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. It's not going to be a great situation for them. This is a side of the field that is incredibly controlled by me. Oh, they get 1 more behind my camera. Okay, maybe 4 versus 6. But they do have an escape. But it's only 1 passing option, so they disconnect themselves from everybody else in a way that leaves them with just 1 option. Which normally ends up being easy enough to defend. Malen should have gotten that one. But I say it's perfectly fine with all of that, because by the time you move the ball back across the midfield, it's too slow and I'm able to get back in shape. So I can move myself out of shape in any situation, or I can get back into shape in those theoretically dangerous spots fast enough. Now, if they've got an immediate threatening pass into that area, then the shape is really, I'm out of position here, and this is a really dangerous zone. But that's only if this is like a pinged pass and is able to be played immediately on the first time here. By the time it just lingers long enough, I can get all of my players back in shape, and we're just basically back to square one. So I'm trying to generate these opportunities where I'm in control. I'm forcing the opponent to go somewhere, or I'm encouraging them pretty much to go somewhere into an area that I'm in control of and just basically able to wrestle possession from eventually. Not successful enough here, mostly because Malen could have had this and just wasn't able to. But I haven't compromised myself enough where I'm losing control somewhere else that's dangerous. Same kind of idea here. Nothing on for them. And what I'm trying to do is just take away options. So I think that's the most dangerous option, you know. But you can really make that. I've got Carvalho there, able to step up. It's fine. I don't have much else other than the pass back. So I'll just I'll get my numbers involved here and just have this little controlled zone for me. You can go back, and all I'm doing here is just, okay, well, they've moved from an area where they only had 1 option to an area where they can at least do a dribble here. They've had that pass on. I think that might be open, but nobody makes that pass. Maybe this one here. So all I'm doing is, okay, they've got 1 option and an unknown amount of other options. They have other things they can do, but most attackers don't attack in any of those other ways. So I'm just saying, okay, I'm going to take away their option. And that's the only thing they see. They had other things they could do, but they're tunnel visioned. All they're doing is they're looking forward on the field too much. And I'm kind of taking advantage of that. I'm saying, you want to go forward every time? I'm just going to take away the forward options. You're going to have to do something to make me compromise my shape. You're not able to, I get possession of the ball back. Now, what they fail at as an attacker is, where are their numbers on the field? Let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe eventually 8, but we'll just say those 7. These two are too far away. They're not really able to do anything with them, and as the ball moves through Tevez, through Bonmati, it's a while until these two actually get any involvement. Basically, I think this might be Son here. Son never really gets involved in this play. Eventually, the left back here does, but it's just one involvement. Where do they actually have an advantage over me? Well, it's here. I've maybe got my 3 midfielders, and they've got 3 and an attacker. I'll do yellow. So I've got my 3 in that shape. Not the best triangle either. Musiala's not really able to get back into the best spot either. They've got a nice little 3 there, and an outlet ball in 2 different areas. So they should have control of the field in that area, which is why I'm saying, you know what, I'm going to take this player, and I'm going to make sure these two stay on this side of the field. I'm moving my shape a little bit. Normally the CDMs are kind of like that. I'm moving them to where it's only this zone, so they're now here instead of that shape, right? Because where's the actual danger on the field? That side. As soon as the ball moves down, same kind of thing. The danger here would be this connection, because they'd have 2 players able to do, you know, through balls, off the ball runs, dribbles with. There's an outlet pass if they ever need it back here. They'll probably have somebody in the center of it, like De Jong will go back here and they'll have that pass there too. All of the danger is out here. Where are they attacking? Not over there. So I can get all of my numbers involved here, because as it is, anytime they want to move the ball back to where they had any kind of control of the field, it's going to take too long and I can get my numbers back over there. So this whole move is kind of recognizing what the opponent actually has as a threat, what they're going to use, where the numbers on the field are, and what I need to cover. And eventually I just kind of wrestle the ball back away from them by limiting their options. It also helps they're limiting their own options by not considering anything else they could do here. But hopefully that helps kind of explain what I'm looking for in my own games. Now, this is something more along the lines of the creative defending, where I'm trying to get my players out of position in a way that encourages my opponent to do something else that isn't actually advantageous to them. This is really subtle, but this was done on purpose, where you'll see the second man press activated on Carvalho here. And we'll see as he steps up, just that little bit. And you might think I've compromised my shape a little bit. Instead of the flat back 4, we've got just that little bit of separation between these two here. It looks like there's a gap where the opponent might be able to get through. No, there's not, because this is Carvalho with Anticipate Plus. You don't have a skill move that can get the ball fast enough there. If you do an L1 sprint boost, Rafa's deep enough, he'll be able to get there. Even though he's explosive, he'll be able to get there first. And anything that steps it too close to Carvalho, well, he's Anticipate Plus, he's able to get that. Where's the danger on the field here? It's here. This is where I don't have a player. This is where I'm missing, I don't know who my cam is here. I think it's this player. So Francescoli, as a result of whatever previous move it was, he's just lingering. I'm not quite sure what he's doing up there. But it takes a while for him to get involved, and we never even see him on the screen again. But the gap that the opponent doesn't recognize is all the way back here. So this is where I don't want them to get. I don't have any control to try to wrestle control in that spot. I would have to move one of my players up and then just compromise my own shape somewhere else. My CDMs would be out of position. I'm even missing my other CDM. Everybody's out of shape here. So what I do is I try to bait the opponent into something that looks like they've got space, but I'm going to control by the time they do anything. So one way you can break your line is, I've talked before about how, again, you don't want to do anything that gets your flat shape into a non-flat shape. You can step your player out of that flat shape when that zone isn't attacked, or doesn't have the capability of being attacked yet, as long as you're able to move that player back into position by the time they do try to attack it. So that's all I'm doing here. I'm doing something that gets out of my flat shape to do some creative defending, where you're able to put some more pressure on the opponent sometimes by getting out of that shape. Again, it's kind of hard to do any pressure when you're just that flat line. So I'm trying to do something where I'm able to press the opponent, but then I'm getting all of the sprint momentum advantage instead of just being flat. And if my player's here and their body shape's facing this way and I get sprinted past, I've got to turn all the way around, and then I've got no, acceleration momentum here. But as soon as my body shape is here, instead of in the other direction, back this way, well, now I'm able to turn and make that sprint much faster, and I do it before the opponent. So they even try to do one of the better accelerating skill moves, but I've got too much distance between it, where it looks like that gap's open, but I'm able to close it down before they can do anything. That was all purposely trying to bait the opponent into doing something that got them away from where they were actually controlling space on the field. So the one part of this I haven't covered as much as I probably should have by now is the timing aspect. There's a lot going on in this defensive play, even though it's such a short one. A lot to cover. We'll see, it's all played out there. But you'll see the player selection I decide here. Actually, let's start earlier. So here, what's the immediate threat? Well, it looks like it's getting forward, right? But what opportunity are they going to have to do anything from here? So getting the ball through the midfield line, I'm not that scared of. I'm kind of, honestly, more scared of it going here. Because again, if you've got the ball deeper, that's where all of these passes can be played. It's much harder to play a pass like that by any time where I'm able to, you make that pass, I'm able to take my own defenders and just sprint back in time and catch up. If you make a pass from here, if this player is able to gain enough momentum by that time where, they're actually on a full sprint at this point, it's much harder for me to select one of these guys and track them, right? Actually sprint back with them. So I'm honestly more scared about the ball being over here than I am about it going to Gouveau. Now the threat's out wide, but there's also a threat in the midfield, so you'll watch as I don't immediately swap all the way to Kimmich. And then there's an immediate turn back to make sure I'm covering a little bit of stuff in the center. If it goes back to Kewell, I'm able to step up with Kimmich there to him. I'm also blocking an immediate pass down to Gouveau again. But even though it looks like the obvious threat is out wide, I'm too scared of anything in the center from happening. I think Kewell's got power shot plus, so I definitely don't want any of that nonsense occurring. So it's almost an encouragement. Okay, you can progress the ball out wide. It looks like it's what's open for you, but again, you're limiting yourself with options. I'm actually controlling, I'm taking away most of your passing options, leaving you with just a dribble, and I've got the timing on it to be able to get it. So with dribbling, or with, stand tackling, the best time to be aggressive on the ball is right after the touch is made. You'll see how far away from him that touch goes. So we'll do it for the whole move. We'll all know about tackling from behind, and I think how bad first touches are and how easy those are to tackle. But when's the best time to tackle for all of these touches here? It's right after the touch. Right then. Now the ball hasn't traveled that far, but that would be a good spot. Ball's far away from him. That's a good spot. Ball's far away from him. So what you want to do with when you're defending is when the opponent's taking a touch, you want to start moving towards where you think that touch is going to be made and go in for the tackle right before the touch occurs. If you time it right, they won't have reaction time to go, oh, this player has stepped up and is able to come get to me now. It looks like they were defensive. This player goes, oh, I'm going to make my dribble. Once that decision is made, I step in, and that's when I tackle the ball. Because you want to get that little bit of momentum right before that touch is made, so you time it right. But if you make your move too early, then they go, oh, this player's actually running at me. I'm going to dribble away instead of into you. So there's this encouraging touch with Kimmich, where instead of continuing to track back, I linger with him. I'll keep him in position there. And again, that's accomplishing two different things. I'm blocking off the passing lanes, and it looks like he's got the touch down to the side of me, but I've got the timing of it where I said, hey, it looked like you were able to dribble me. Now I start moving into it, get the right timing, able to get the ball back. All right, I've got two clips to go through here really quick. First one I don't make a move on. We'll watch Sterling. He's kind of got the pace on me. I'm a little bit worried that he'll knock the ball beyond me, so I'm maintaining my shape here. You're moving away. I don't really think you've got anything too threatening here. But once he gets the ball to closer control, this is much harder for me to predict when the touch is going to come and when I'm actually going to be able to take advantage of that and get the ball back. So I kind of just try to contain, and I don't do it the best, and I don't really see this deep run here. So he ends up making that pass. But it's because Sterling a little bit too much at pace for me to be aggressive with Kimmich there. I think if I step up at the first opportunity, then he'll take the touch around me. The second one has gone down. Now if that second touch instead was directly into me, that is this one here, if this is directly forward, that's when I just step into it. But because it's slightly down, it's a little further away from me, I can't get to it. So say, okay, I'll wait for the next heavy touch. The opponent doesn't take, starts controlling it. Now these are some close control dribbles, not really able to do anything with that. And a passing the ball back into me. But this one here, complete difference. That's when I capitalize. Now watch the exact timing of this here, because this is what's important. Cancelo's going to start his run. We'll see on my left stick here. Cancelo starts his run here. Let's slow it down because it will be easier to see, I think. So to get the exact timing of it, I'm starting to move here. So basically halfway, a little past halfway between Johnson's first touch and his second touch. That's when I'm moving forward. I'll commit because by this point, there's kind of two ways to look at it. A, either the opponent's too tunnel visioned, they've already committed this as their action. It's really hard for them to go, oh, the opponent switched to this. I have 0.2 seconds to react to it and do some other action, pass out of it or dribble out of it or something, do a skill move out of it, whatever. So the reaction time really isn't there. But even if you had the reaction time, the game might not recognize that anyway. It's a little bit too late. The player's probably locked into performing that action anyway. Because this is a sprint touch, it's going to knock the ball so far away from him that I'm able to walk into it. Opponent recognizes it and probably could try to pass out of it, but again, this is a decent distance pass to make completely across his momentum that even if they try to make that, I'll probably get there faster anyway. This is going to be one of those like little bobbly passes that goes in the air, right? So it's not great from them. If you have the reaction time here, the only thing you can really do is like, oh, I'll just spam an L1 triangle forward or spam a square pass forward or something and just hope it works, right? But that's, again, if you have the reaction time. So the timing on this, very important, especially this being, I recognize these are sprint touches that takes the ball even further away. I'm able to capitalize on the ball after that touch before they're able to do anything else. Now, this video's actually ended up longer than I meant it to once again. It's not necessarily a bad idea to have some longer form tutorials out to just have some videos I can always point back to and say, hey, you're looking for defending? Here's my kind of masterclass on it, right? This is most of what I've got for defensive ideas. There are some more specifics I could do, like counterattacks if you really want to see those or something like that. But really, principally, it's just that idea of minimizing the amount of opportunities your opponent has until eventually they narrow themselves down with too few options, and then you're able to capitalize on just the couple options they have left. And then timing on the right, the right timing to make your stand tackles where they're kicking the ball further away from themselves, and just maintaining your shape until the opponent either forces you out of shape and you have to do that in the right way to still get the numerical advantage, or you can kind of pull yourself out of shape sometimes to gain that advantage yourself, but only when they don't have threat to get beyond it. Or just maintaining your shape and saying, hey, you can take your space further back, but you're never going to be able to get through me, so I'm not threatened by this. You can just have the ball, it's fine. Really depends on your defensive players, your shape, the formation that you're using, and the game state. You know, if you're winning by 1 or 2, then why pull yourself out of position? You can just maintain it. So, again, if you do have further questions, do let me know. I'm planning on eventually, once I'm done with these kinds of tutorial videos, then I'm just going to move into analysis. So I won't do like full-on tutorial, this is specifically this. I'll look at games holistically, and I'll just kind of upload, hey, these were maybe my best and my worst games for the weekend, or throughout the week, and this is what we can learn from them. You know, see, again, holistically, like I'll cover every single one of these ideas from all of these tutorials eventually throughout all of these. So if you keep up with those kinds of analysis videos, then we'll be able to cover basically everything I would in tutorials anyway. If you did enjoy this, let me know. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I will be out with I think a dribbling tutorial soon here. Got a couple updates to make from my previous one, but beyond that, I do hope you enjoyed. Take it easy, everybody, and peace.